Some screams coming your way courtesy of the citizens of Springfield. Here's your spooky spot on the Super 7 Treehouse of Horror reaction figures. Super 7's retro reaction line welcomes the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror characters. They feature 5 points of articulation and packed with retro blister card packaging. Just before we cut to this year's couch gag, let's go ahead and grab the tape measure and see how tall the Super 7 Simpsons reaction figures are from the Treehouse of Horror. Each one of them are obviously going to be of different sizes. It seems like Homer, and I would imagine like Homer and Kang are about the same size, with Marge really being the tallest. So what I'll do is I'll measure Homer first. Figure's going to stand about 3 3/4 of an inch in height, or it's going to be about 9 centimeters tall. Bart being the smallest figure, though, he's only going to be about 2 3/4 of an inch in height, or about 6 centimeters tall. And then Marge being the tallest of the batch, she's 4.5 inches in height, or she's going to be about 11.5 centimeters tall. And I have a couple of other reaction figures of the horror variety, so we'll bring in the weirdest line of reaction figures also from Super 7. So here's what Homer looks like with Trash Squatch. Here's what Kang looks like, say, for example, with Blood. And here's what Marge looks like, along with Gory I love the names that Super 7 come up with. Just before we actually talk a little bit about the accessories that come included with the figures, one thing I did want to say, though, and it involves me bringing in the original packaging, was the fact I wish there was a way that they could have made this consumer-friendly, in the way that you'd be able to open up the packaging, take your figure out, and then be able to put it back in the clamshell. Normally, though, I would have just cut this carefully and very, very carefully removed then the figure from inside the packaging, but my whole plan was really to have these on display on my shelf, especially during Halloween, so I didn't really mind the idea of damaging the packaging, but the packaging really is so good. You'd really like to have it where you'd be able, again, take the figure out and put it back in. Something I would like to see them maybe do with future Treehouse of Horror reaction figures. Each one of them come with included accessories. Although really looking at it, it only seems to be the case that Homer and Kang have accessories. Bart is actually wearing his accessory, and Marge's accessory is actually inside her ribcage. More on that in a moment. First, though, let's have a look at Homer. Homer comes included, first of all, with his little deed or warrant to kill Marge Simpson. You can see it says, to die, Marge Simpson. This does fit into his hand. I find it actually is better to fit it into his skeleton hand and then use his other free hand to hold the scythe. But you can take the little scroll here and you just take Homer Simpson's skeletal hand, and that fits really nicely in between his thumb and his fingers. The other accessory that come include with Grim Reaper Homer is that the figure comes included with a really interesting looking scythe. Not sharp to the touch where I'm going to be drawing any bit blood, but it certainly looks like it can inflict some serious damage. It's all been cast, I'm guessing, here in brown plastic, painting only the end of the blade in silver, and the additional handles here as well are also in silver. And of course you can also take that as well and clip it into Homer's hand. Now, at the time of doing this review, we already know we are going to be getting Ultimate Simpsons figures of also the Treehouse variety. Maybe what they're planning to do as well as more of the obscure characters like we're getting essentially with this line, they're probably going to be keeping those more relegated to the reaction line of figures with more of the scaled back 5 points of articulation. The larger scale figures, for example, like Flanders as the Devil, one I'm really looking forward to getting, is all those ones are going to be of the more larger scale with tons of more posability afforded to them. So as it goes with also Homer, I guess seeing as we've already looked at the accessories that come included with him, let's go ahead and remove the scroll for right now. We're going to go ahead and remove the scythe and getting a closer look at the figure. Now, he is wearing his cloak like you would have had in the episode. The sculpting on the figure, again, is top-notch. Rivals, of course, I would say the ultimate figure of Homer Simpson, although the Homer Simpson that we got in the larger Ultimates line would have been Space Homer. So this one a little bit of a departure from that. I like where they've sculpted the hood. The hood seems to actually be of a softer plastic. And of course, he's got the face inside of it. It doesn't look like you can remove the hood. Even though it does look like it's technically a separate piece, I would imagine it'd be quite unfinished if you looked at underneath the hood. Now, of course, he does also have the long cloak. The cloak underneath still is able to see. I don't know if you guys can actually see that or not. He still has parts of his pants still visible. And the figure does also have pegels on the undersides of his feet. Their staction, I mean, in the sense that they only really have 5 points of articulation. So Homer, for example, only does just rotate back and forth on the head. This, by the way, is, again, all very rubbery plastic. So as you are rotating, you can kind of see the way it lifts itself around the shoulder area. Homer has articulation here in the arms. He doesn't have it actually in the hands. So again, he still retains that 5 points of articulation. And he does also have it in his legs. But because, again, like he's encased in plastic, really isn't much that you can really do with his legs. And again, pegels on the undersides of his feet. Like the look of Grim Reaper Homer. Let's jump on over now to Marge. Marge, funny enough, though, now I did want to get this set online. Originally, I went over to Entertainment Earth. Ironically enough, they had Homer, they had Bart, and they had Kang, but they didn't seem to have Marge. Marge seems to be the one that's the hardest to find. I also went around to a couple of other online sites that are normally stocking the ReAction figures, and again, it was the same thing. They had Homer, they had Bart, they had Kang, but they didn't have Marge. Skeleton Marge, though, is the one of the hardest actually to stand from this line. Between her and Bart, her small feet are really the culprit. Bart just happens to have, again, like slightly off-kiltered legs that we'll talk more about in a moment. The neat thing, though, about Marge is the fact that inside her rib cage, you can see there's Snowball, too. Tiny little Snowball. You wouldn't be able to get Snowball out contained inside the rib cage, but that's a nice little fun additional nod to the original episode. And it's a fun little way to include an accessory, even though you can't really remove it. Marge's face, at least, is human, while the rest of the remains down below, again, is just all skeleton. The face is sculpted really well. The paint has been handled nicely here on the eyelashes, the very shocked look on her face, and the very long hair that Marge is always known for having. Paint on these guys are really quite good. Of course, when it comes again to the body, she's going to be a little limited when it comes to posability. So it's only going to be really just the arms. It's only really just going to be the legs. But again, I think the articulation is where it counts. And I never really imagine that Super7 would ever venture off to do an ultimate version of Skeletal Marge. So while we are getting her in a slightly smaller release, we are at least getting a Skeletal Marge. I really like the look of this one. A little harder to stand just again because the sizing of her feet. I find also like this one leg is a little on the looser side. But if you are looking to get this set for yourself, it's probably either better to get the set as a whole than probably trying to track down Marge. For some reason also, I did say earlier that Marge was the hardest to find. Marge also seemed the most expensive to find. I was lucky enough, again, to get this entire set over on eBay. Then on to Bart. Bart is actually from one of my favorite episodes. At the end of the episode, Bart wakes up. And of course, that smoke that's coming into the room that turns everybody inside out. This is, of course, one of the Simpsons members with their skin turned inside out, and they proceed to have a dance number as well. I think that's also one notable episode that has Willie Bean starring in all of them. The Shining, if memory serves me correctly. Now, Bart does have a removable hat, so if you wanted to, you could take the hat off. You can still then see all the veins that make up the front face, the back of the face. Of course, he does have the ribs and the bones sticking out from his body as well. It's a really unsightly look to Bart Simpson. Personally, again, I would just rather have him displayed with the hat myself. He doesn't have, though, a cane. I feel like in that episode and that dance number, all the Simpsons members, I think, actually had canes. Bart does not actually come included with one. He is, though, small, and even though he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, I would probably use a display stand, I think, really for Bart, because he has, of the four figures here, he has the hardest time, it seems, to stand. I think it has something also to do with the fact his feet aren't completely flat either. But at least you can rotate these back and forth. So his articulation is, once again, his head is going to be just on a straight swivel. His arms are going to swivel back and forth. And, of course, you can do the same then down below with the legs. Really nice looking Bart Simpson. And, again, we'll put them right over there. At the time of also doing this review, they have announced a couple of other ReAction figures, one of which actually being the Freddy Krueger release of Willie, which is kind of strange because I would hope that that one actually gets eventually an ultimate release and not only, again, just relegated to ReAction. Then to the last figure, it's going to be Kang as Bob Dole. Now, picking up the figure, of course, one of the other accessories that come included with this figure is the mask that he's wearing that actually is Bob Dole. Bob Dole, Bob Dole. And you can actually just take the mask and clip it into his hand. So he's always carrying around the mask if he wants to. Mask stays fairly well in place. You can kind of move it around. It's not going to fall out of place. But you can kind of see that would have been what Bob Dole's face would have looked like. Really, really cool look. And of course, underneath that, not hiding at all the fact that he's an alien, you've got the big giant eyeball of Kang. Painted nicely again, you've got the brighter green happening here. You've got some nice spots printed on the back of the face. One singular oculus eye. And then down below, he's got himself, of course, the suit that does say, "Vote for Dole." Dole, Bob Dole. Articulation, again, on this guy, I'm just going to go ahead and remove his mask for right now, is still, even though he has the large head, still you can manage to rotate the head all the way around. You can rotate the arms back and forth as well. Nothing, again, in the hands, and again, with ReAction figures, usually it's only 5 points of articulation. So the same rule applies again for Kang. You can only rotate his head back and forth this way, his arms back and forth, and again, his legs back and forth. A set, for me at least, I don't mind the idea that I had to open. Still, though, I kind of wish in a way that Super7 could incorporate more user-friendly packaging. I'm just going to go ahead and get Bob Dole's mask in his hand. Yeah, user-friendly packaging, I think, would be the ideal way to go. Just again, because if you are somebody that likes to kind of keep the cards, and really for the cards being as good as they are, I mean, like, they kind of have a more retro kind of design to them. Here's what it looks like also in the back. The back is kind of neat because it looks like an old newspaper or comic book article, something you could clip out, send away for, along with sea monkeys. I like this. I just kind of wish there was a way to kind of keep everything intact when it comes to the card. For me, at least, I don't mind, because it's ultimately my whole plan in mind was anyways just to have these on display. So you saw at the beginning of the review where I very so haphazardly just ripped away the packaging. It was more just to the idea that I want to just have these guys on display every year for Halloween. Now, we are getting, of course, more of the ReAction figures, one of which being, again, the Willy one I'm really looking forward to getting. And I think we're also getting as well Homer with the toupee. The thing about it, though, is while I am wondering, if we are getting those figures as, say, ReAction figures, does that then not mean we're going to be getting those as Ultimate figures? Because, like, Toupee Homer, for example, and Willy as Freddy Krueger would be ones I definitely would like to get in a larger scale. We already know we are getting Kang and Kodos. We already know that we are going to be getting as well we are also getting as well, I just drew an absolute blank, we're also getting as well Ned Flanders as the Devil. So those are ones I'm definitely looking forward to. But I say more of these Super7 Simpsons from the Treehouse of Horror. Whether they are the smaller ReAction figures like we are getting right here, or whether they be the larger scale figures, it's a good time to be a Halloween fan, especially if you're one that likes to watch the Treehouse of Horror every single year. So what's next for the Treehouse of Horror ReAction figures? From the next wave, it seems to be the case that we're getting Witch's Coven Marge, we're getting Freddy Krueger Willy, we're getting Toupee Homer, and we're also getting Bart's evil twin, I'm putting that in quotation marks, Hugo. Now, unlike this line that we looked at, where I don't feel necessarily disappointed that we're not getting these as Ultimate figures, I kind of feel the opposite way in what we're going to begin with the next wave. Witch's Coven Marge, maybe I could pass without. But Freddy Krueger Willy, Toupee Homer, and even Hugo Bart, those would all be ones I would love to get in Ultimate treatment as well. The Ultimate treatment, of course, involves them on their end to be producing larger scale figures. The cost of tooling would be a lot higher too, because they'd have to make movable parts for those. But that was a line that I really would have wanted more for Ultimates figures, but I'm not disappointed at all that we got with this wave. They're all kind of more kept to the smaller 5-point articulated ReAction figures. Of the ones that we looked at in this review, I think my favorite is probably Grim Reaper Homer. Bart's pretty cool too as well. I actually ended up using a display stand just because, especially with him holding the hat, it makes the figure very top heavy and he's really prone to falling over. You'll be happy to know as well that they're using the same diameter size pegs as your standard display stand from other figure companies. So if you want to use a display stand to kind of keep Bart from falling over whether he has his skin or not, you can also use those as well. All in all, though, again, I really like the look of this set. A little disappointed that I had to destroy the packaging in order to get the figures out, but again, my biggest plan the whole time of doing this, and even picking up this line, was I wanted to have them loose on my shelf. I would have loved, ideally, if I would have been able to put them back in the packaging. If ever the chance came down the road, I wanted to change my mind and put them back in the card, because these would be the kind of figures that not only look good loose on the shelf, but they also look equally good inside the packaging mounted on my wall. What do you guys think of the ReAction line of Super7 Treehouse of Horror Simpsons figures? Have you been collecting this line? Or is this something that you guys could see yourselves interested in? Also, as well, let me know what other Simpsons Treehouse of Horror characters you'd like to see Super7 release in, whether it be the Ultimates line or whether they are going to be in the ReAction line. Again, we are still going to be getting ourselves the Willy as the Devil, and we're going to be also getting as well Kang and Kodos. I don't think it's the next wave. Maybe it's the wave right after that. But that's definitely those figures. Those are the ones I'm really looking forward to getting. I have kind of felt that they've been hit or miss with the first wave that we got. Mo being really one of my favorites. Space Homer sort of seemed questionable as to why we would have got Space Homer really as an Ultimates release. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Super7 have in store for Simpsons fans moving forward, both, again, the ReAction line and the Ultimates line. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing during the month of Spottober and you can't wait to see more, If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you're turning on the bell notification. Popping up also at the very end of this video, if you have a little bit of time on your hands, there will also be a playlist of other things I've looked at from Super7. Keep screaming your way until we have the next review popping up here on this channel. And of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.